Hello everyone and welcome to this video. Now today I'm going to be doing an album review, going to be taking a look at this record here today, which is Venus and Mars by Wings. So yes, I'll just be doing my usual thing in this video, giving a bit of background information about the album, then showing you my vinyl copy of it here, and then looking at each of the album's tracks in detail. So this was Paul McCartney and Wings' fourth studio album, released on the 27th of May in 1975. So this was the follow-up to Band on the Run, which was their most successful album to date, but one that very much nearly destroyed the group, with two two original members of the band leaving before they started work on that album. So they were a trio on Band on the Run. But with this record, I think after Band on the Run, and after it became his most critically acclaimed album, I think he was very eager to get a band back together to sort of start touring again. So he brought on board initially Jimmy McCulloch, who was a young Scottish guitarist, and he eased him into the fold by having him play on this album, which is called McGee, which was an album recorded by Paul McCartney's brother Mike McCartney, although it's essentially a kind of Wings album in disguise, really. This a lot of the songs co-written with McCartney. You've got Denny Lane on here, you've got McCartney, you've got Jimmy McCulloch on here as well. A few months later they got on board Jeff Britton on drums, following some auditions, and much as he had done with Band on the Run, where he had recorded that album in Nigeria, for his next album he wanted to go on a sort of trip and record it internationally as well. So initial sessions took place in Nashville. Now I'm not quite sure if these were intended for sort of album sessions, or I think they were also kind of general rehearsal sessions for the new lineup of Wings, and essentially it was probably better described as a holiday, rather than proper sessions. Proceeded really without a sense of real purpose. The main motivation, like I said, was to get this new lineup sort of rehearsed up, but also record some new music as well. The only real output off the Nashville sessions was the single Junior's Farm that came out towards the end of 1974. Now these Nashville sessions were fraught with difficulty, particularly with the young Jimmy McCulloch, who on some occasions had to go at Linda's lack of musical ability. He also got arrested for drink driving as well, and also Jeff Britton as well caused some vandalism to the house that they were staying in. So very much the new members of Wings certainly not behaving themselves during these sessions. Also around this time you had the one hand clapping session as well. So this was in August of 1974, after they returned from Nashville, and essentially the purpose of this, I think, was essentially so that McCartney could kind of see what this new lineup of Wings looked like playing, again very much with the kind of idea of going back going back out on tour. So very much up to this point they'd really just been kind of rehearsing the existing Wings repertoire, but come November 1974 they want to start recording a new album, so although McCartney is keen again to record internationally, there are some initial sessions at Abbey Road in order to allow them time to get US visas sorted out, because the national sessions were technically actually all illegal, because they were there on tourist visas rather than working visas, they done some initial sessions at Abbey Road, but then on the recommendation of Paul Simon, they decided to Paul was asking around his friends, and Paul Simon recommended this guy Alan Toussaint and his recording studio in New Orleans. So that's where Wings headed in January of 1975, just in time for the Mardi Gras season. Now this whole album, McCartney had a very I think strong idea of what he wanted going into it, because he'd already mapped out the album's track list before they'd even recorded a note of music, basically something that he'd not really done since the second half of Abbey Road, really coming up with the album conceptually and then going about creating it. And And apparently he also felt under quite a bit of pressure as well to follow up like Band on the Run, to make a worthy follow-up to that album. And like I think, wanted to, I guess, cement the success he had like with that album, like with an equally good follow-up. Now in New Orleans there was also the slim possibility of a reunion with John Lennon. So although they had met and jammed together in the March of 1974, I think there was talk of them actually doing a proper serious reunion, get back together and writing songs together again. However, around this time was when John got back together like with Yoko, and that kind of very much like put an end like to any possible reunion between the two of them. Now additionally, when they got to New Orleans and started work on the album, there was some difficulties within Wings like themselves as well. So particularly with the drummer Jeff Britton, who was very much struggling to sort of fit in with the band personally, but also in terms of his playing. He was a great drummer, which is evident on the One Hand Clapping album, but I think maybe a little bit one-dimensional. So there was a couple of tracks on here that he really struggled with, and he was fired in rather ugly fashion, actually, in a very similar way to Pete Best many years earlier. After only 6 months in the group, Paul decided that enough was enough and that he would be getting the chop. So then Paul asked his arranger on this album, a local guy called Tony Dorsey, for some recommendations for his replacement, and Tony Dorsey came up with the name of Joe English, who was very quickly brought on board to complete the album, and once it was he realized that he fit in with the band personally, he was it was decided that he would join Wings as a full-time member, and it would be this lineup of Wings that was go on to tour the world towards the latter half of 1975 and into 1976. So upon the release of the completed album, it was met with mostly positive reviews, although certainly a bit more muted than Band on the Run. There was a few critics saying that it was a little bit lightweight and a definite step down from Band on the Run, but he still had a fair bit of goodwill in the music press at this time. Also had strong sales as well, peaked at number 1 in both the UK and the US, eventually going platinum in both countries. So anyway, I will now show you my vinyl copy of the album here. So this is an original UK pressing of it here, and a really nice UK pressing of it, actually. Really nice condition on this one here. This was of course the mid-70s, so the album does come with a lot of packaging, but you get the lovely gatefold here with a nice picture of Wings in the desert there. So with this you get not only the album in a really nice in a sleeve here, really like this design on it, and then the record is on Capitol. So I think this was the first post Beatles product to be released not on the Apple label. So there's no Apple labels on here at all. It's on Capitol here, which is really nice to see. And then as I was saying, because this was the mid-70s, they really went to town with the extra packaging on the album. So in the other half of the gatefold you get a number of little other tidbits as well. I'm not sure if this is fully complete, but with my copy you get a little sticker here, just says Wings, Venus and Mars are alright tonight, just like the album cover. You get this kind of planet sort of diagram here, on another sticker. These are all kind of stickers, so you could sort of take them off and sort of stick them somewhere. But yeah, just other little gum for you. And then you get not one but 2 posters as well. So you get this first poster here, which is just a kind of photo collage of them playing with the kind of snooker balls on the album cover there. And then this photo here, which is quite a nice photo, but a kind of strange one, I guess, to maybe have as a poster, because they're not quite clear in it. But it's Paul and Linda at the Mardi Gras there, and they're not kind of centre frame. There's Linda and there's Paul, but yeah, just an interesting poster there, with the album. Okay, so I'll now go over each of the album's tracks in detail. I'll score each song out of 10, and then use those scores to give us a overall percentage marking for the album.
Venus and Mars are all right tonight.
So the album kicks off with Venus and Mars Rock Show, which, although technically separate songs, they are very much inseparable and I will be scoring together here. So Venus and Mars is a really good song, I think. It opens up the album really well and kind of like sets the scene like for like sort of like the whole album, really, you know. I think around this time, you know, McCartney was taking influence from his contemporaries, where he had a lot of space themes going on, like in music, so things like Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon and Space Oddity and all that kind of stuff. It was like a commonplace theme, really. Like, so McCartney was sort of very much tapping into that with like this whole album, but like certainly like the title track, like in particular, it's a very, very, very pretty song and like is like a nice like opener like to the album, and that sieges then into Rock Show, which is a song which was written for the stage, and I must say I don't care too much for the track. It's really never been a favourite of mine. It's lyrically full of kind of rock and roll cliches and the kind of about sort of being like long hair at Madison Square, rock and roll at the Hollywood Bowl, quite sort of like immature, daft kind of rhymes and that. But you know, you could say, well, that could be helped if it was a really good like rocking performance, but unfortunately, like on this album version, it just feels a bit lackluster, certainly compared to the live Wings Over America version. Particularly, there's a bit where there's these it goes duh 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 oi, and that just sounds so limp like on this album, and it's just it particularly, like I said, like when like compared like to like the live version. It's a song that Wings really struggled with, like to like record like as well. So this song originally dated back to the November sessions, like at Abbey Road, like with Jeff Britton, but they just couldn't get like a good take, and like even with like Joe English, it still wasn't working out. So like in like frustration more than anything else, really, Jimmy McCulloch like kind of like got like behind the kit and just started thrashing out like some kind of beat, and I think McCartney was like, yeah, that's what the song needs, sort of thing. But even then, I still feel that it is a weak performance like of like the song. I also just think it's too long as well. There's too many different sections to it. There's bits where he's doing these silly voices, which I sometimes quite like, daft kind of McCartney, and like where he's doing sort of weird and wacky stuff like Pipes of Peace and the Ram album and that. But this, I don't know, like I don't know, just that bit where he's like, in my green metal suit, I'm preparing to shoot up the city and all that kind of stuff. I just don't really like it. And yeah, it's just really not a favourite track of mine. So it's a 7 out of 10, like I give into the combined Venus and Mars Rock Show piece. Though this was also a single from the album. I think this was the third single from the album, and it reached number 12 in America, and I think failed to chart in the UK, or might have not even been released like in the UK at all. But yeah, it's an okay opener to the album for me. But then we get the first real good track on the record for me, which is called Lovin' Song. Now, this is a really pleasant, atmospheric ballad, this one here. The atmosphere created, like in a big part, like to Jeff Britton, who is on drums on this song, and he plays some milk bottles, like on like the track, and then there's also, I think, some handbells, like later, like overdub, like on it, like as well. I really like the construction of this song, the kind of contrast between the kind of quiet sort of verse, and then the kind of more majestic chorus. I love that line, like I can see the places we used to go to now, happiness in the homeland. It's quite like it's a love song, but it can also be a kind of about sort of like looking back, like on like kind of like a previous love, like a more like melancholic song, like as well. So no, like I really like this one here. I think it's a really gorgeous track, I think, and yeah, very underrated like as a song.
I love you and you seem to like me.
Okay, the next note on the album is You Gave Me the Answer. Now, this for me is the weakest track on the album, which I don't think is a very popular like opinion. And this is one of Paul's many kind of show tuney styles, or like old time sort of style songs. This one very much, I think he kind of like live dedicated it to kind of Fred Astaire. So it's got that kind of like 1940s sort of like, or like maybe like even earlier sort of like feel to it. Now normally I really like songs where Paul kind of shows off like his like versatility, but this is just a song that I simply have never liked. It to me feels a bit like he's he's trying to do a kind of blatant copy like of a style without sort of putting like his own spin like or like his own like identity like on it, and to an extent like on here like where he's kind of almost masking like his voice a bit like with like this kind of sort of grainy like sound effects like on like the vocal. I also really dislike the spoken word bits like off like the song. Like I don't like spoken word bits in songs like and generally, but all the bits where he's singing like, oh, this is fun and we should do this more often and all that, I just don't like it. It really makes me cringe, this song. So yeah, you gave me the answer, very much a skipper there for me. Okay, and then the next track up is Magneto and Titanium Man, and this song is about a series of comic book characters. So this was one of Paul's interests like at like the time, and the lyrics essentially on here like about like these characters so like organising I think like a robbery like on here. And while it's a subject matter that I have literally next to no interest in, I do really enjoy this song. I think particularly like I like the arrangement. I think it's like a Fender Rhodes like electric piano Paul's playing on it. That really gives the song like a good bounce, like a good like momentum, but also vocally as well. Both Paul's lead vocal, particularly like the middle bit where Paul goes like, she's a 5-star criminal breaking the code, like that whole bit is just great. And then you've got a fantastic backing vocal arrangement like from Denny and Linda, very much one of the finest showcases I think like off like the Wings like 3-part harmony. So no, yeah, Magneto and Titanium Man, another very 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 solid song. Okay, the next track up on the album, which closes off side 1, is Letting Go. Now, this one is a sultry rocker kind of thing, quite laid back, but also quite not aggressive, but certainly like the guitars are quite kind of bluesy and quite sort of like in your face, like kind of thing. This one was originally called Now That She Is Mine, and it kind of like went through like a few different like iterations, but I think it's a good song, but has a very flat performance like on like this album version. Again, it's the live version where this song really like comes alive, like particularly like kind of like after that key change where Paul really lets rip like with like his vocal like sort of like performance. I do like the kind of like the key change like on this song. It's quite a severe key change, like up like 3 octaves, so it like really like lifts and like elevates like the song. It's a track that Paul has personally got like a lot of fondness for. Like I think in back in like the early 2000s, like he said that it was one of his favourites like of like his whole career, and it's a song that he brought back into his live set list like in 2010, which I remember being something that was very quite something like to behold, like, you know, like him doing like this like quite obscure Wings song like that hadn't been heard live for like many years. And it's a track that has actually become like a kind of permanent fixture like in like his set list, really. Like he uses this song to introduce like the horn section like when like he performs live. Now this was the album's second single, and it was a bit of a flop. It got to number 39 in America and number 41 in the UK, and this was his lowest charting solo single like up to this point, and breaking a run of 9 consecutive top 10 hits in either country. So yeah, a very much a disappointing performance commercially for this song, but I can kind of see why. You know, to me this doesn't sound like a hit single because it's not a rocker, it's not an upbeat song that people could sort of dance to, or kind of say, so I'm thinking of things like Jet, like, or Band of Their Own, which are kind of anthem songs. This really isn't that, but then it's also not a ballad. It doesn't have that kind of crossover appeal that kind of mums and grannies would also like it, like say a track like My Love like perhaps had, like, or I could even say some of like his more like novelty songs like as well. So and like also like as a single like as well didn't have anything unique like on like the B-side either, so for fans a lot of fans probably just passed up on it like as well. So yeah, like disappointing performance for this song. But yeah, for me it's never been a huge favourite of mine. I do like it when it's on the album. I would never skip it, but I'm giving it like an 8 out of 10 because I do enjoy it. but it's really not a favourite of mine.
Standing in the hall of the great cathedral.
Okay, now we're on to side 2, which kicks off with Venus and Mars Reprise. So this is a slightly longer version of the opening title track. This one's got slightly different lyrics on it, and it's a slightly longer version of it, with a kind of longer outro, like a second verse on it. I think it's good on the album, actually. I think this one actually really works, from a sequencing point of view, going back to the title track. I think it's a really nice piece, actually. So again, I would give it an 8 out of 10, which is probably what I would give Venus and Mars the main bit, if I was scoring it as its own, because I think it's a really good, I think it's a really good, really lovely piece of music.
Spirits of ancient
And that sets us up quite nicely for the next track, which is Spirits of Ancient Egypt. Now, this is apparently the song that Jeff Britton really struggled to grasp, and is what basically got him kicked out off the band. And it's quite an interesting song in some ways, because it's got a good production on it, I think, and it's a song that changes evolves, and there's different there's sort of changes in tempo, and rhythm, and that the introduction's quite not quite psychedelic, but you've got quite a spacey drum part, lots of echoey sounds, sort of quite Pink Floydy in some ways. But then it goes into a more straight ahead four to the floor kind of rocker, on the second verse. So this song was also conceived as Denny Lane's vocal showcase on the album, and he does do a good job of singing the verses. But this is a song that he really struggled to get the chorus right on, and basically right up until the last minute, he kept trying and trying to nail the vocal part, but he just couldn't manage it really with this song. So in the end, it was Paul who took the lead vocal on the chorus line. Now really the elephant in the room with this song, and why I'm giving it a 5 out of 10, is the lyrics, which are pretty bad, I have to say. They feel like they were written on the spot, I'm your baby and I love you, you can take a pound of love and cook it in the stew, he sings on it. And then this chorus, the Spirits of Ancient Egypt line, which has no relationship at all to what has come before it, in lagging the verses. The redeeming feature though, as I said, is the production. I do, I said, like Joe English's drumming on this song here, and the kind of low-key psychedelic vibes off the song. But yeah, it really is a weak track overall there. Okay, the next song up is Medicine Jar. Now, this is a Jimmy McCulloch penned song. So this was quite a notable song, really, because this was the first sort of non-McCartney penned track on a Wings album, if you exclude the Love is Strange cover that is. So it was quite a big deal. This young guitarist has just joined the band, and suddenly he's getting songs on the album. Not even Denny Lane could get any of his songs on Red Rose Speedway. And I think it was only No Words that was on Band on the Run, but that was a co-write between them. But yeah, this one here is, I think, was really only put on the album and kind of worked on by Wings, in a way to sort of placate his, Jimmy's occasional outbursts and kind of erratic behaviour. They're okay, we'll do one of your songs, if you just behave yourself, kind of thing. But this is a really good song, I think. It was written lyrically, it was co-written by Jimmy and a guy called Colin Allen, who was a bandmate of his from an earlier life, and it's essentially about it's a kind of warning song about I think it was about a girl this Colin Allen was seeing, who was sort of addicted to kind of taking these sleeping pills, and it sort of acts as a kind of a warning song, dead on your feet, you won't get far if you keep on sticking your hand in the medicine jar, he sings on it. And it's quite a prophetic song in some ways, because essentially Jimmy McCulloch only about 4 years after this would die off a drug overdose, aged, I think he was only 29, I think. So quite a tragic end for him. But this is a heavy rocker. It's a much needed burst of energy on the album, and is a really solid track. I think Jimmy sings it well. I think it's a great performance. So yeah, no, Medicine Jar are another really good track. Okay, and then we get Call Me Back Again. Now, this is probably the most New Orleans-y track on the album. Lyrically, apparently this is directed at John Lennon, and like after like their possible meeting up and like sort of like Lennon's like eventual sort of like no-show like sort of thing. Like McCartney sort of like wrote this song, essentially saying like I call you, I'm putting in an effort, so why is it sort of like not being like reciprocated, like kind of thing. It's a bluesy song, I think, with a rough and emotional vocal performance, really. You know, McCartney going back to like his kind of like "Oh Darling" like sort of like voice. It's got a good horn section on it, which adds some good texture like to like the track. My only real complaint with it though is it just is a bit drawn out, particularly the kind of fade out, which is a very slow, very gradual fade out, to the point where the last I think 30 seconds of the track are essentially just silence. So I just feel that with this song here, they could have either just kept the track going and sort of like riffing on it, or just cut it off, like kind of thing. To me, this one just kind of peters off like into silence, and like just sort of like takes its time like too much like to finish. So no, but it's still a good song though. Like I do really enjoy it like while it's on though. So yeah, Call Me Back Again will get an 8 out of 10.
Oh, yes, indeed, we know that people will find a way to go no.
Okay, next one up on the album is Listen to What the Man Said. So this was the lead-off single for the album, and it's one of the only singles like I've got from the album here. So this was a #1 single like in like America, #6 in the UK, and was originally considered by Paul like as a weaker track like on the album, and like one he thought of dropping. But I think it's one of the strongest tracks like on the album. It's probably it probably is the strongest song like on here. It's got an effortless melody, this track. You've got a great guest spot on here from saxophonist Tom Scott, the kind of famous like LA kind of session player, and essentially like his sax solo on this was recorded like in one take, essentially just on like his run through. Like he was hearing the track live, playing along with it, not knowing that he was being recorded, and then kind of after that he kind of like sort of Paul was like, yeah, I think we got the take kind of thing. So yeah, quite a remarkable like sort of like turnaround like for like the song, like which like Paul said that he felt that this is what kind of like made it special, like, and like sort of like really added like a lot like to like the track. It is quite a strange song though, kind of structurally. Essentially you've got two verses back to back, and then just back-to-back choruses, and sort of like take the song like to like its like end. So it's quite weird. It's quite weirdly like laid out like as a song. But I think it's a very good track though, a very happy sort of feel-good song. Again, very like effortless melody on it, great vocal arrangement, like particularly backing vocals like from Linda and Denny like on like the track. So no, it is a Wings classic here. Yeah, a 10 out of 10 for Listen to What the Man Said.
Treat her gently, treat her kind.
Okay, and then we get to the last kind of proper song on the album, which is Treat Her Gently, Lonely Old People. Now, a common misconception with this song is that these were kind of two separate tracks stitched together. So thinking of like Uncle Albert, Admiral Halsey, Winter Rose, Love Fake, Love Awake, that kind of thing with this. But this was essentially actually just written like as like one piece, almost more like as a kind of verse chorus kind of structure like to it. I really like this song. I like it like as a closer like on the album like as well. I think it sieges particularly well from Listen to What the Man Said. There's a kind of harp crescendo, which sort of then just eases us into like this song here. It's a plaintive piano ballad with some very interesting like rhythmic changes. So again, great vocal work like on this one here. And the lyrics I really like. They're very touching about a kind of couple growing old together, like eking our lives away. He sings like on like the track, like bit by bit, two lonely old people keeping the time of day. And it's just, it's even more poignant because, like Paul and Linda would never actually grow old together. Paul, I think Linda was maybe in like her late 50s like when like she passed away. So it's a kind of a future that like they never had really like on like this song here. So I think that makes it quite a touching song, and it's a great example of Wings of like Wings' three-part harmony and McCartney's gift for like an effortless melody. So no, Treat Her Gently, Lonely Old People is a real favourite of mine, like on the album. I would be giving it a 9 out of 10. But then the album does close with a 50-second track, which I'm not going to bother scoring, which is the Crossroads theme. Now, Crossroads was a kind of cheap sort of British TV soap, like in like the 70s. I don't know much about it. I thought it was like the Coronation Street, like Office Day kind of thing, or kind of like was a rival like to like sort of like Coronation Street, I guess, I can't like the time. And I mean, I don't care for this song. I don't really think it adds anything to the album. It's not even that good a version like of it. Like when like you listen to like the actual Crossroads, like so like the actual like original version of it, this version doesn't really sound like anything like it. Like they kind of put like their own spin on it. And yeah, I just don't really get it like on the album. I just don't think it really adds like anything to the record. So yeah, a bit of a letdown like as a closer, but it's so short. It's 50 seconds. That seconds like that. It's not even worth really scoring. Okay, so overall, this album would get 77%. So I do think there are some really, really strong tracks like on this album, particularly Loving Song, Magneto and Titanium Man, Listen to What the Man Said, and Treat Her Gently, Lonely Old People, I think are all really excellent like McCartney tracks. I think like in a way, this album is quite funny because it kind of feels like the whole feels weaker than the sum of its parts. Usually like it's like the other way around, but I kind of feel that there's a lot of good tracks hiding like on this album, but just kind of all together it perhaps feels a little bit too overworked, a bit too sterile. I think McCartney was obviously like on here wanting to craft an album, like a strong and versatile album, like sort of thing, like kind of sort of cherry picking sort of different musical styles and sort of crafting a record with like wide appeal, trying to please everyone like a little bit. And I just think that kind of it does feel a bit too piecemeal, this album. It doesn't have a consistent theme like or a consistent heart like to it. It feels very much like the kind of McCartney album that a record company like would like wanted to like have released like around this time, a little bit of everything for everyone kind of thing. So it's an album that I personally don't have a whole lot of connection with really. Like when I ranked McCartney's 70s albums with all of the Saunders, like in like a recent video, this was quite near the bottom. I think I had this as my second least favourite Wings album, with like At the Speed of Sound like below it. So yeah, like it's like not an album that I'm massively fond of, but like as I said, it does still have some really great McCartney tracks like lurking on it. So yeah, it is definitely like a worthwhile album like in like his discography, and quite a significant one like as well, you know, very much sort of like cementing like Wings' success like in like the mid-70s and being the springboard to their hugely successful like tour. So yes, I hope you have enjoyed my review there of Wings and Venus and Mars. So yes, I hope you have enjoyed, and I will see you all next time for the next video. Goodbye.